I switched to English because the next speaker is going to be Martin Martin Charter. Sorry, enough. Okay, director at the Center for Sustainable Design, University of Creative Arts. I'm really happy to have Martin with us. He's going to give us a broad overview of what we can expect from in the next year. What is the status, the circular economy, and what should happen in the next year to really make circular economy develop. Hi, Martin, I can see you there.
Hi.
Hi, great to have you.
Great. Thank you. Can you see my slides okay?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, right. I've got my 12 minutes, so I'll need to move fast. Okay, yeah. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the invite. I won't have time to introduce myself, so if people are interested, go to LinkedIn, or I put the details in the chat. So I'm going to talk around designing for a circular economy. And one of the first things that we need to sort of start off with is to contextualize circular economy. So circular economy is part of the broader approach to sustainable development, and picks up a number of the sustainable development goals. And what we've seen really over the last sort of 7-8 years is an increased usage of the term circular economy. And this is from Google Trends, just showing the increased usage of the term. Actually, the first legislation was in China in 2008. So the terminology is going increasingly into sort of global systems. But it's also important to recognize that we move in waves, and we are presently, in my opinion, in a fifth green consumer wave. And that, and those waves have different perspectives. So this particular wave that we're in at the moment, the fifth wave, is very much around the climate change, around nature and biodiversity, but also the social and community dimension because of COVID has come in. And I think a key element of this wave is the engagement by youth in the agenda. Picking up on the circular economy aspects, I think we're seeing sort of particularly reuse of clothing, etc., becoming an issue. So perspective is everything. Yes, we may have trends focusing on particular issues, but we need to keep our overall perspective. 2015 was a critical year for many reasons in globally and in Europe, in that we had the Paris Climate Change Accord, we had the recalibration in 2015 of the Sustainable Development Agenda with the launch of the SDGs, but also it was the Commission's first attempt to bring together a whole package of policies in the Circular Economy Action Plan 1.0. That was then, 2 years ago, brought into a 2.0, if you like. And what was particularly interesting there was a focus on new sectors. For example, clothing and textiles becoming much more in the focal area for circular economy thinking. And we're all looking forward. I heard the previous speaker mention the Sustainable Product Initiative, and this is going to be a very, in the end of March, the launch of a whole series of suite of policy activity around circularity at a product level. But of course, COVID really has hit everybody and has led to, a lot of uncertainty. But one of the things in the context of this discussion, prior to the pandemic, we talked about 3 mega trends: globalization, technological acceleration, and increased environmental degradation. But with the whole, pandemic issue, this is perhaps leading us to potentially thinking about the issues to do with supply chains. I know this was mentioned in the previous presentation as well, the huge problems with supply chains, and this issue potentially of thinking globally, but acting more locally. And I think that regional dimension conceptually is very important within circular economy, but in practice, I think this is going to be more and more important. How do we effectively use our resources more, once it comes into our individual countries or regions? So I think in the green growth, types of agendas are emerging. We're going to see sort of the previous green growth initiatives in the 2008 after the economic crash very much focused around low carbon, aspects within the broader packages. But I think we're seeing circularity and the social dimension coming more effectively into this. Another key issue is that the G20 countries, and I know Italy just was the host, are increasingly picking up circular economy activities, and we did a report around the state of the art that was led by the Institute of International Affairs in Italy. And really a couple of key points there is clearly the G20 countries have responsibility for around about 2/3 of global material use. And there's sort of responsibility, in terms of developing the economies, but, how are we going to tackle the challenges with resource use? But of course, there is a key point here of linking up the circular economy agenda with the climate change agenda. And within the report, we have a reference that it discusses circular economy approaches can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by up to 60%. By extending the value of products and materials and not extracting new materials. So effectively, in my opinion, the circular economy discussion is certainly at a product level is much more around value, how we retain value in products, materials, and components in economic and social systems for as long as possible. It's not a waste discussion. And really, we need to be thinking about an extended life cycle perspective. So thinking about those products, materials, and components, how we extend the life of those products throughout the life cycle, with much more of a focus on the use phase to keep the systems working. And really, end of life should be end of life. I encapsulated a lot of this thinking in this book, but I have no time to talk about this today. So going into the sort of second half of the presentation, very much if we're thinking at product level, it's thinking about products that use biological nutrients and technical nutrients. And what we found in working in BS 8001, which was the first standard on implementing circularity in organizations, the thinking was much more evolved around product circularity, if you like, and the technical systems. Much more complicated than the biosystems. But it's even more complicated, and the butterfly diagram that many of you will have seen is a useful conceptual tool, but in reality, many products include mixed materials. So, for example, here's some socks, it's Healthy Sea socks, and they include elastomer, they include cotton, and they include Second Life nylon from fishing nets. Now that's 3 materials. You've got technical and bio. So whilst it's a movement in the right direction, when that product comes to the end of life, it's landfill. Unless we start to build in disassembly and separation to bring out the different materials, we're sort of designing for death or designing for landfill. So we need that thinking in the product and design and development stage where 80% of a product's environmental impact is determined. We are starting to see companies starting to build this into their design and development systems. And this is Philips, who have a very grooved approach to eco-design since the 1990s. But they've now changed their system to bring in circularity. So they're thinking about maintenance, refurbishment, could we harvest the parts, and really materials recycling much further down the line. We have an Italian company, Aquafil, who really have led the way in developing a de and a repolymerization for nylon from fishing gear, and have produced the EcoNyl fiber that is being used in many products from carpets to swimwear. But also important to recognize, and I always look, and I started my journey in sustainability in the late 80s to see how this has been reflected back in the companies. And we're starting to see job titles emerge now: circular designer, circular product manager, product design manager. So this is starting to be an issue that companies are picking up. This is Lego, for example. But we're also seeing a number of entrepreneurs really picking up on the agenda from many different perspectives. So iFixit, they produce high quality tutorials showing individuals how to repair the products. And the business model then is they then sell you the tools to repair your products. And what we've identified is a new group or a segment of the population who now are repairing their products. And they feel confident to do that. And I'll advise why in a short while. So also other companies emerging. So this is BioBean. They've used coffee waste to produce logs for heating. And we're also seeing new materials emerging. So the whole emergence of so-called vegan leathers that are derived from renewable fibers. One of the challenges, however, is with some of these vegan leathers is they're still incorporating polymers as a binder. But we're seeing Pienotex, Bananatex, and for example, Deserto or Desertex, who are using cactus. So we've got this emergence, particularly with maybe the younger generation who are looking at a plant-based diet. Maybe we're going to see reactions to conventional leather in some part of segments of the community. So vegan leathers are moving from the lab now into commercial products. Also, another example, upcycling products. So this is a company, Elvis and Cressy. They took fire hoses and then converted them to bags, which they then are selling into Harrods in London. So the paradigm is changing. And in terms of that, moving into the last phase of the presentation, what we have at a high level is the whole discussion around Industry 4.0, that suite of cyber physical systems, from machine learning to artificial intelligence to robotics, that is starting to come in, particularly into manufacturing and some element into product areas. But what I also see is a reindustrialization 2.0 emerging, bottom up, more about decentralization that is potentially more smarter, low carbon and circular. So it's very much grassroots, and it's about making, modifying and fixing products. And we've seen this featured in many magazines over the last 5 years, but this is really being empowered by online videos out there that's showing how to make, modify and fix products. They may not be the best videos, but people can see easily how to attempt to make, modify and fix. But also importantly are the venues that are emerging to help people make, modify and fix, from maker spaces to hacker spaces to repair cafes. And I'll just finish up on repair cafes. Repair cafes are community workshops where people come together to fix products. There is approximately 2,200 in the world, mainly in Belgium, Netherlands and Germany, but France, UK is picking up. There are repair cafes in Italy as well. But I know a little bit about this because I did did and was involved in the first 3 global surveys, and I set one up, the first UK's first charity in a market town 1 hour south of London, 40,000 population. We've set this up as a partnership between different players in the local community, thinking about repair cafes as circular social innovations. What we do, it's not religiously linked, but we use a church space and we have a range of activity going on, from electricals to mechanicals, to bicycles, to clothing, to furniture. And we get an amazing skill set of people involved who are just sitting there in the community, who've got incredible skills, either within their professions, or they've retrained as they've gone into semi-retirement. But we're creating real impact, as are many of these repair cafes. So I'll just pick out a couple of numbers here. So since we launched, we've completed nearly 1,500 successful repairs. We have a 66% repair rate, despite the vast majority of products not being designed for repairability. And as a result of that successful repair, we've diverted over 4 tons from landfill, nearly 40 tons of carbon. And also importantly, with the circular social dimension, we've saved citizens over £120,000 by extending the life of the products to repair. And typically we'll see this going on, individual repairs, but collective repairs. And as part of this, creating that link to circular economy, to climate change, we've also developed a freely available Repair Cafe carbon calculator to show the carbon linkages to repairs. We've also started to experiment with using 3D printing for repair and completed a number of successful repairs. So Repair Cafes, excuse me, are about community, and they're about repair, and also about building potentially community resilience, particularly important coming out of the pandemic. Pandemic impacted us, you know, lockdown, we had to change our business model, we had to be flexible, and we started really one of the first things we did to keep people together in the network is we set up a very basic WhatsApp group for our volunteers and our repairers. We tried to experiment with online events through Facebook, but it didn't really work. That social dimension didn't come through for these you know, the online things. But when we were able to, we developed a COVID-safe approach. This is a section of products where we changed our model where people had to book in products rather than come in. That was very successful. We didn't have that social dimension. We ran webinars, but very recently we've been able to go back and we moved into a larger space in this church. Those pews have been removed, so we're a fantastic, amazing location. And this is what we're looking forward to do, getting back, bring the volunteers and repairers together to have, you know, fantastic dinners, annual dinners. And I'll just finish this with a generational point. What we did as part of our activities, our charitable activities, developed something called Repair Connections to try and, you know, for people who are less connected during COVID, bring people together to chat around and use repair as a sort of focus. And we had a grandfather here with his young 11-year-old grandson. And because of the help the grandfather had given him, then the young lad just decided to repair a light online live, and he did it. So I hope you found at least one interesting idea there, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. It was really interesting, your point of view, and also very practical, bringing example from the Repair Cafe you have developed.